consent is a cup of tea. And they're not, they could be having a seizure.
Shoved like a dildo down. Hello and welcome to Dirty Laundry. My name is Toby and as always I'm joined with Amy.
Today we are talking about sex within schools and how it is not always promoted, and how education isn't always the best thing for disabilities.
Straight into the first topic, which will be like the talking about like sex in school and about how the schools kind of talk about it and basically how they sort of do like the like how they do the education around it and providing all the sort of like.
So basically we're going to be talking about their approach on sex in schools.
Yes, it's their approach basically.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they have a very good approach. What do you think?
I think that it's not always the best on how it's always approached. That obviously amnesty is taught quite a lot, especially in Catholic schools, which isn't a great thing to teach students, which then is like the main cause of teenage pregnancies, which leads to like a lot of like pregnancies amongst younger people in general. But I know for myself that I literally got consent is a cup of tea as a video, and then that was it. So
yeah, it was very like the boys go in one room, the girls go in the other, and we basically talk about what guys do and what girls do, and what to say and what not to say. It was very like one lesson, and that was it really.
Yeah, we didn't even get separated. We literally got like a video, and then got told that's it. Go on with the rest of your day, and then got told to like kind of move on. So it's not great.
It's not the best. It's like I think of it like they tried to teach you it, and then all I had in the lesson was you came in front of all the guys, shoved like a dildo down, and then put a condom on top of it and showed you how to put one on, and that was practically it on the sort of like what the guys do.
So what you do, you start off with kissing, licking, and sucking.
And they didn't talk much about what the women do and what the women want, or basically what kind of goes on with the women. And I feel that's a bit of an issue there with guys as well, getting taught sex and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it is a lot more of, they need to at least educate you properly on different sizes, different needs, how stuff works, why it works that way, like how different people want it, why people want it that way. There's a lot to at least try to teach people, because then people try and go out in the world and they don't get it how.
Yeah, because they don't get taught it like how to do it safely. So sometimes you get people who maybe get like diseases from doing it because they do it incorrectly. Like especially if you're like doing it in like a gay relationship between men, some people don't get taught how to do that correctly and how to use protection. Something that causes like diseases and illnesses to spread, which is not a good thing either. I've noticed.
No, it's definitely not.
Yeah. And then another thing that schools don't do very well is talking about disabilities, especially with some students with learning disabilities and sort of physical disabilities. So, like, especially with me, because I suffer with dyslexia, I feel like a lot of schools, like, same with the sex stuff, they don't really talk about it. It's kind of like, oh, look, we have support in place for you, but they don't really, like, talk about the support. It's like, oh, look, here's some, like, extra help with extra time on certain, like, modules or certain lessons, and that's really it. They don't really, like, prioritise you as like.
I know that you've mentioned like it's been worse as you come to university, that obviously because you went to private school as well, that it was obviously better while you were at private school.
Oh yeah, the state school education system's not very good at all for these sort of people who were like got dyslexia, because they kind of alienate them a bit because they don't have the sort of funding that private schools get.
Because obviously there's like 30 of us in a class and you can't have a separate teacher for that one kid that has dyslexia in that class, but obviously in the private school there's only 7 of you. So like you can still be pulled out and helped along and you get a lot more funding, a lot more help, but when the 30 plus class, we don't get that support. And obviously in university it's a lot of like self-taught, and as you just said, like you only get like extra time, maybe like an extra week, 2 weeks to like do your lessons, do all your exams and stuff. But then how do you get your support in place to help you even do the workload in the first place?
Yeah, and I've found that sometimes they offer you support, but then support is very hard to get access to because you have to spend money, your own money, to get to support. And even when like they fund it for you, even then it's very minimal. And like I was meant to get given software at university to help me with reading like long books and stuff, but they didn't really give me the software. So it's like
They
you
also
sent
make
to
it
me.
really difficult to access the software because,
It's on a USB stick, and I'm like, I can't plug it into my MacBook because it's not
well,
compatible.
they made it so I had to log into something, but then they wouldn't give me the login access to log into half of it. So then you couldn't log in, and then it was like back and forth. But then they wouldn't they wouldn't tell you how to log in, so you could never log into anything.
Yeah, it's not very fair. And I tried to use the software when they showed me, and it's like, yeah, but it wasn't very good taught to me either. A lot of buttons and stuff you have to press. And also other issues that schools university schools don't talk about is epilepsy. Because I know you've got epilepsy, and that is a kind of a big issue.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people don't know what it is. I know a lot of people, and even if they do know what it is, they don't know how to deal with it. They just think, oh my God, that person has seizures. And I'm like, no, that's not always the case. As much as you do have seizures, it's like there's a lot of stuff that goes into like the behind the scenes of like, well, like there's certain things that you have to avoid to like stop the triggering of stuff. Because there's people who will have like full frontal seizures and people who will just have like normal everyday, like they'll just blank. So you'll just be sat in a room and then all of a sudden they'll just look like they're daydreaming, and they're not. They could be having a seizure.
Yeah, so do you think like the university offers like the support you need around your epilepsy, or do you feel like there isn't any much support at university level?
They don't always, like, because again, like I just said, they don't always know like how to always approach it. Because again, if you're having like a full frontal seizure, you're like having like a full like seizure on the floor, and you kind of need to go home, sleep it off, or go to the hospital, depending on how bad it is. But if you're just kind of blanking, they don't really know that you then need to kind of go sleep it off for like 4 days. You can't do anything in those 4 days. That then there's also like the episodes in between that you're like, oh my God, like I can't even like get out of bed because I'm so like tired. I can't move. I can't even go get a shower because I'm so scared that I'm just going to have a seizure. Like you can't even do anything for yourself.
Yeah. Do you think that affects your mental health at all? Worrying about all these seizures and support around that?
I think not necessarily just the seizures. I think it's also like your support mechanisms, because you end up so heavily dependent on other people that you end up knowing that like when they're not pulling their weight, that you end up having to bear everything on yourself. You end up collecting it all up, and then something finally just like blows, and you're just like, oh my God, like why the fuck can't you just like clean up? Why can't you just hoover the floor? Why can't you just wash your own dishes? Why can't you wipe that surface down? Why can't you clean the fridge? Why can't you go do the grocery shopping this week? Like, why is it all left down to me? Why do I have to be the one that leads this group project? And like, because obviously you've tried to manage it by yourself, and even as you will know with your disability, like with your mental like loads as well, that you'll be like, well, I'm doing everything myself, and I'm managing my load. Why am I managing your load as well?
Yeah, because with my dyslexia, I feel like I've got to manage my negatives. It's like I can't read very well. I find it hard to write, so I'm to deal with that on top of also regular stuff like cleaning, or I want to do the uni work or a certain deadline, and there's sort of stress that you have to do all these different stuff at the same time, and there's like but I spell something wrong. It takes me a lot longer to write essays and to like proofread them, and then to sort of like understand where my mistake was. And even when I read them again, I'm like, I didn't spell that wrong. And the lecturers say to me when they come back in the feedback, like, you spelled things wrong, and that cost you some marks. And I was like, I didn't realise.
Yeah, you're like, but I didn't even like that reads perfectly logical in my head.
It reads fine to me, but then I realised it's big words that get spelt wrong, only because they sound like what I've written, when it's not actually how they're meant to be spelt, which kind of defeats what I'm trying to speak out to the lecturers in the essays. And then they're looking at me going, is this what you're trying to say? Because it can make it hard to communicate the point across to them.
Yeah, like a lot of the time people are like, can you reword that properly so like you're actually speaking English? And I'm like, but that makes perfect logical sense. I've literally said it how I would think it. Because like even you said to me the other day, I like asked you to read something and you were like, I wouldn't use that phrasing. And I was like, oh, but I thought that was naturally logical to use. Yeah. And it's even just having someone to kind of go, but have you thought about why you have used that? Why have you picked those words? Why have you picked to use that phrase? because obviously most people wouldn't just put like certain words together and go, well, that makes a sentence.
Yeah, because I struggle with because especially with lots of blocks of text, especially when reading like books for like, I need to do like research and get linked and stuff and get my references right. But I find it hard to just look through all the books because there's so many words. I'm trying to find what the exact thing I need from that block of text is very hard. Especially with like black text on white paper, it's very hard to read for me. So I find it easier with like blue paper with black text because I feel like the blue kind of calms down the black. It's not too much of a contrast on your eyes.
And that's why I like poetry, because like I feel like it's a lot more calmer most of the time, and it's a lot like more spaced out.
Well, it's got like the different lines and not very long either. That's why like a haiku is really nice because it's very short.
Yeah, it's quite short, it's quite sweet, and then like it doesn't always have to be about like a sweet subject. It can be quite harsh subjects.
In silence, alone, I feel my heart and marvel at the miracle.
But like because it's quite condensed and it's like, or maybe all over the page because of how they've laid it out, it like breaks it up, gets it over and done with, but it also makes it easier to read, gets it out of the way, but it also like condenses it.
Yeah, and I also feel like that, especially with like physical disabilities as well, because they're part of like LGBT stuff as well, and I feel like they're kind of left behind, especially with like access to like certain like uni campus stuff, like the events or like the trying to get access to like just the lessons themselves, and even sometimes they can't go up the stairs or there's no lifts available, and they're like, how do we get to the lectures? And sometimes they just go, guess what, you're not coming to the lecture, we can't give you access because we're in a strange room that's old and has only stairs access. And I feel like that's a bit of a kind of a barrier they need to fix.
Yeah, like obviously like the building we're in like now, like the quad, is obviously not accessible at all. There's any stairs, there's no lifts, but then obviously elsewhere on campus is obviously there's a few more accessible buildings, but then York itself isn't accessible, with it being like full cobbles, which then obviously the disabled students themselves have come forward and been like, oh my god, like we can't even get around like the freshers events, we can't get in the clubs, so they feel like they're not being heard.
Yeah, they're excluded from all the events that everyone else is doing because they're more able, everyone else, than these people are.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes them a little bit worse in their mental health as well, which suffers again, and it also triggers that because they feel like they're left out from everything, and they're like, oh, I wish I could go, and then they can't because there's barriers in place.
Yeah.
Having more, like, I think especially the cobbles, because they're very slippery when they get wet, and I feel like that's a real issue as well, especially all the uneven paths around, just generally in any city really. Uneven paths and sort of like ledges, and there's also like some places you want to go to like a library, something they're not accessible either, or like a swimming centre. So like, things you want to do sometimes aren't accessible because of your disability, and I feel like that's not fair for them people.
But then how do you make sure that everybody feels that they've been heard? How do you make sure? Like, how do you?
Because I feel like there's also an issue with some universities and their like student union sort of body, and the people who run that are kind of running it separately from the rest of universities. And I feel like if they work more in collaboration with the student union, they could get a more inclusive sort of diverse campus, because they can work with the like sort of all the student events and that they're holding in the student union, and also the society as well. Because there are some like disabled societies and LGBT societies and stuff like that. And if they worked more with them on the events and also talk to them about the inclusion on sort of like education and accessibility, they might get a better and more inclusive campus.
We know what we would like to change, but are these people wanting the same thing? Are these people?
Yeah, because there's different changes for different people, because everyone wants something different.
Yeah, obviously everybody also has different stories. Everybody has different like marks to tell, and it's just realising that everybody has come a long way to where they are now, and it's about realising that society is trying to move in the right direction, but they've still got a long way to go.
Well, I think that wraps it up for this episode. I want to thank Amy as always for joining me. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you for having me.
I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening, or watching if you're on YouTube. Please subscribe. If you're on Spotify, please follow us on Spotify. Thank you all for watching. Podcast out. Bye.
Bye.